It was just past sunset when panic erupted outside the corner store. A masked gunman raised his weapon and everyone ran. Except for one man. He was the one people crossed the street to avoid. Tattooed, silent, always alone. They called him a thug. Some said he'd been in jail. No one really knew him. But when a terrified child was frozen in the chaos, he didn't think twice. He dove forward, shielded the child with his own body, and took the hit that wasn't meant for him. Most people only knew him as Smoke. A shadow. A warning. But that night, he became a name the neighborhood would speak with reverence. This is the story of how a man once judged by his skin and scars became the reason an entire community found hope again. Backhand index pointing right, stay with us. And let this moment of courage remind you. Sometimes, the heart that saves us is the one we feared the most. They called him Smoke. No first name.
No backstory.
Just that one word whispered in wary tones. Like an omen. Some said it was because he moved like fog, quiet, slow, barely there. Others said it came from a fire he started years ago. Though no one could ever say when or where. But names stick easier than facts in a place like Ridgeville. He lived upstairs in a crumbling brick building, above the laundromat that always smelled like rust and detergent. The blinds in his window were always half shut. At night, you could sometimes see him sitting still, a silhouette lit by the soft blue glow of a TV, always watching, never speaking. Every morning, he left at the same time. Same boots, same jacket, same hood pulled low. He walked past the bakery, the church, and the bus depot, and no one ever said hello. Because Smoke didn't fit. Not in Ridgeville. Not in the neat story the town liked to tell about itself. All community potlucks and Sunday sermons and front porches swept clean. He was the blemish on a polished sidewalk. He was the chapter everyone pretended didn't exist. His skin was dark. His arms were inked. His eyes, tired and low, made people uncomfortable. No matter what he did, he entered every space already carrying guilt that wasn't his. Years ago, he'd been locked up. Not for drugs. Not for assault. Just for stealing a portable heater during a bitter winter when his mother was sick and the pipes in their house had frozen over. For years, that was the cost of survival and of being born with the wrong face in the wrong place. When he came back, he didn't expect applause. He just wanted silence. But Ridgeville wasn't built to forget. It was built to remember selectively and permanently. He tried to live quietly, took a janitor's job at the hospital, mopped the floors, never missed a shift, helped other workers without being asked, took double shifts when someone had a sick kid or a hangover. But no matter how hard he worked, how still he stood, the town only saw the shadows behind him. One evening, a boy dropped his bike in front of the convenience store. Smoke bent down to help him pick it up. The boy's mother rushed out of the store and pulled him away without a word. Didn't even look at Smoke. Just stared at the boy like he'd narrowly escaped danger. Another time, he walked past the church on a Tuesday afternoon. He heard someone mutter, "Lord, keep us safe." He wasn't sure if it was the sermon or if it was meant for him. Even the corner store clerk, a teenager with acne and shaky hands, watched him like every move might end in a headline. These weren't dramatic confrontations. They were smaller than that, quieter. But it was that quiet that cut the deepest. No one ever said it aloud. But everyone said it with their eyes. You don't belong here. And over time, that message settled into Smoke's bones. So he spoke less, walked faster, avoided eye contact. He let them build their story, that he was dangerous, cold, unreachable, because fighting it only made it worse. But what no one saw was what lived beneath the silence. Smoke still kept a worn photo of his younger brother in his wallet, Jamal, age 16, smiling wide on a skateboard. Jamal, who got caught up with the wrong people in the wrong alley and never came home again. Smoke had been away, locked up, when it happened. He never got to say goodbye. Never got to keep the promise he'd once made to protect him. And that failure lived in him like a quiet storm. It showed up in the way he tensed when sirens passed. In the way his hands shook slightly when a kid cried in public. In the way he always noticed when someone small or vulnerable was in trouble. He didn't want redemption. He didn't believe in second chances. But deep inside, Some ember still smoldered, the need to protect someone, anyone, if life gave him the chance. He didn't know that chance was coming. But Ridgeville knew who it thought he was. And it wasn't done reminding him. If Ridgeville had a personality, it would be polite to your face and whisper behind your back. On paper, it was idyllic. White houses with wraparound porches, a town square that held farmers' markets on weekends, and an old clock tower that chimed every hour on the hour, as if reminding everyone that time here belonged to a different era. But beneath the warm facades and neighborhood block parties was something colder. Something quiet. Something inherited. Ridgeville didn't scream its prejudice. It smiled through it. And for a man like Smoke, that smile was a knife. He'd grown used to the way people tensed when he walked by. Used to the way eyes avoided his. How car doors clicked locked when he crossed the parking lot. How sales associates followed him down aisles with a grin that didn't reach their eyes. It wasn't overt. It didn't need to be. The town had already written his story. It didn't matter that he showed up to work early, left late, kept to himself. It didn't matter that the crime he was known for, stealing a heater during a bitter winter, was an act of desperation, not malice. In Ridgeville, what you did was never as important as what they believed about you. And they believed he was dangerous. The town didn't forget because it chose not to. When people gathered at barbershops, over coffee after Sunday service, they didn't talk about Smoke's work ethic. They talked about his tattoos. About how he always wore that same jacket. About how people like him never really change. And just like that, memory twisted into myth. The incident with the heater? That became a string of robberies. His silence? That became hostile. His quiet eyes? Cold. Unreadable. You never know what he's thinking. Even the kids learned it not from direct hate but from observation. They saw how their parents whispered. How their teachers tightened their voices when he walked by the school fence. They saw the space left open around him. That ring of emptiness, and they understood. Stay away. Don't ask why. Just stay away. And so they did. He once helped a boy who fell off his skateboard on Main Street. The boy scraped his knees bad, blood dripping down his shin. Smoke reached down to help. The boy's mother came sprinting from across the street, yanked him away by the arm and said nothing to Smoke. Not even thank you. She turned and walked off, holding her child like Smoke had burned him. The boy looked back once. His eyes weren't afraid, just confused. And that look stayed with Smoke for weeks. At the diner, the waitress never wrote his name on the receipt. At the bank, he was asked twice for ID, even though the teller knew him by face. At the hospital where he worked night shifts, no one ever invited him to the staff gatherings. He found out through an overheard conversation about cake and paper plates in the break room. When he walked in, the room fell silent. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted their chair. The cake remained untouched in front of him. So he turned around and walked out, and yet he stayed. In a town that painted him as a threat, he chose not to become one. Not because he owed Ridgeville anything, but because, deep inside, he still carried the echo of someone who once believed in goodness. Maybe it came from his brother, Jamal, whose death was still a wound he carried like a secret under his skin. Maybe it came from his mother, who used to hum old songs in the kitchen and tell him, even when they hate you, don't hate back. Or maybe it came from the part of himself he'd never fully buried. The boy who still believed that doing right mattered, even when no one noticed. Especially then. But every man has a line. And the pressure had been building. There was a weight in Ridgeville's air lately, subtle, heavy. Like a thunderstorm pressing down just before it breaks. Smoke felt it. He saw it in the way people snapped at each other in line at the store. He heard it in the rising arguments over prices, over parking spots, over things that didn't matter. It was like the whole town was cracking beneath its own illusion of order. He didn't know it yet, but he was standing at the edge of a moment that would tear that illusion open. Because sometimes it only takes a second. A sharp sound. A wrong place, wrong time. A child in danger. And a man no one trusted, becoming the only one brave enough to act. Thursday evening in Ridgeville was a slow burn. The kind of quiet that creeps up, familiar and thick. Like old soup on a stove, too bland to notice until something boils over. Smoke had taken his usual walk, past the same fences, the same stairs, past the same father who pulled his son a little closer, the same woman who pretended not to see him, even though they'd locked eyes. He'd stopped at the corner store, not because he needed anything, but because it was a place to stand still, just for a moment, and disappear into the shelves like a ghost. A bottle of water in his hand, a quiet nod to the kid behind the counter. No one smiled, no one spoke, until the door slammed open. It didn't sound like a customer. There was no jingle, only force. Smoke turned, and the whole store shifted. A man, maybe mid-20s, stood in the doorway. Black hoodie, covered face, one hand buried in his coat, the other gesturing wildly. Down, on the floor, now. His voice cracked, not from age, from panic. Inside, time twisted. The mother near the fridge screamed. Her daughter, no older than 7, froze. The juice box slipped from her hands, splattered at her knees. 2 teenagers dropped behind a snack aisle. The clerk raised both hands, stammering. Smoke stood still. The man moved fast, pointing now. What did I say? Open the drawer. The clerk fumbled. The mother crouched low, shielding her daughter, but not well enough. Smoke saw it in a flash. The child was exposed. Just behind her mother's elbow. A clean line of sight. The gun, now fully drawn, was twitching in that direction. He didn't think. He moved. It wasn't heroism. It wasn't instinct. It was something deeper. Something older. Like a reflex born from every moment no one had protected him. He dropped the bottle. Dove forward. His body collided with the girl's. Arms wrapping around her, dragging her close, down, shielded. Then, the shot. One. Loud. Echoing. Glass shook. Someone screamed. The teens shouted. The clerk hit the ground. And the robber? He ran. Dropped the weapon. Gone before anyone could move. Smoke didn't. He lay still. Chest rising. Blood beginning to warm the floor beneath him. But his grip around the girl remained tight. Controlled, not crushing. She was safe. He had taken the shot. Her mother crawled to them, sobbing. The child wouldn't let go of him. And Smoke, still on his side, looked at her with a calmness that stunned everyone in the room. You okay? He whispered. The girl nodded, still crying. That was all he needed. The sirens came minutes later. Officer Mitchell arrived first. The same man who had once tailed Smoke for walking too slowly past a hardware store. He stepped into the store and froze. He saw the gun, the clerk, the crowd, the blood. Then, Smoke. Mitchell blinked, swallowed hard, and for the first time in his career, said Smoke's name without suspicion. Smoke? Soft, confused, human. Smoke didn't reply. He didn't need to. The little girl held his hand tighter. The EMTs loaded Smoke onto the stretcher. He'll live, one of them said. Through and through. Clean shot. Lucky. No one called him lucky. The clerk stood silent. The mother stood shaking. The girl, now wrapped in a silver blanket, asked one question. Will he be okay? Her voice was thin, but it pierced something deep in every person watching. Outside, a small crowd had formed. Phones raised. Faces stunned. One teenager uploaded the clip. No filter. No edit. Just, he saved her. It spread like fire. By the time the ambulance pulled away, Smoke's name was no longer just a whisper. It was being typed, shared, recorded. And in that silence, Ridgeville changed. Not entirely, not cleanly, but irreversibly. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet for a man who had become a storm. Outside, the news vans hummed. Journalists whispered in hallways, waiting for statements no one would give. Camera crews filmed the same window for hours, hoping for movement, any movement, from behind the curtains. But inside that room, Smoke lay still. Not unconscious, not unwell, just quiet. He hadn't spoken since the ambulance. Hadn't asked for anything. Not food, not water, not visitors. And yet, he'd never been more visible in his entire life. The video had crossed over. It wasn't just Ridgeville anymore. National morning shows aired it in slow motion. Crime analysts broke it down frame by frame. Social media lit up with headlines. The man they misjudged. He was treated like a thug, but he shielded a child. Hero or hypocrite? How our fears shape our reality. People debated his past, his record, his silence, his tattoos. They asked the wrong questions. Why was he in that store? Would he have done the same for someone else's child? Does one good deed erase a criminal history? Few asked the right one. Why did we never see him until now? Back in Ridgeville, the town moved carefully. Like someone had knocked over a vase and no one knew who should pick it up first. Some locals spoke out. The corner store clerk gave a shaky interview on Channel 7. I didn't know him. I thought I did. But I never looked past what I assumed. The pastor rewrote Sunday's sermon. We preach love, but we practice distance. A high school civics teacher held a discussion with her class. 3 kids said their parents still didn't believe Smoke was a hero. One girl cried and said her little brother used to point at him from the car and say, "That man's scary." Now he called him Superman. Officer Mitchell's statement went viral too, but not the official one. The handwritten line at the bottom of his incident report somehow leaked. We were wrong about him. 6 words. That's all. But it landed harder than any broadcast. Because Ridgeville knew it was true, and no one knew how to say it out loud. The flowers outside the hospital began as a single bouquet. Then came cards, stuffed animals, posters taped to the wall. Thank you, Smoke. Not all heroes wear uniforms. No one dared to knock on his door, but the hallway smelled like apology. On day 3, the girl came. Ella. She wore mismatched socks and a too-big jacket. She walked in holding a piece of paper. Crayon drawings of her in smoke, stick figures smiling beneath a sun with a crooked smile. She didn't speak at first, just walked over and placed it on the side table beside the untouched water cup. Then, from her pocket, she took out something else. A juice box. She looked up at him, her eyes still puffy, and whispered, "It's fruit punch. The one I dropped. I saved this for you." Smoke blinked. Something behind his ribs shifted, softened. He took it from her with both hands, slowly, gently, like it was the most fragile thing in the world. Then, for the first time in days, he smiled. Small, barely there, but real. Her mother stood near the door, eyes wet, watching. She didn't speak either, but her hand rested over her heart the whole time. When Ella left, she turned back at the door. "I don't think you're scary," she said. "I think you're safe." Smoke didn't reply, but his chest lifted just once, like a breath he hadn't allowed himself to take. Finally made it out. That night, another headline made its way online. It didn't come from a news anchor. Came from Ella's mother. She wrote it on her social media page. "He didn't just protect my daughter. He protected something inside all of us. The part we'd forgotten was worth saving." It went viral, not for outrage, but for honesty, told entirely through Ella's reflective adult voice. This version deepens emotional resonance and memory detail. It explores the long-term imprint of Smoke's act on her identity, values, and voice, while gently planting seeds for the final section, Full Circle, A New Beginning. Cherry Blossom Section 5. The Girl Who Never Forgot. Expanded. I don't remember what flavor I was reaching for. I remember the cold of the fridge door, the sound of crinkling juice boxes, my mom calling from behind me, asking if I wanted apple or fruit punch. Then, glass shattered. Voices rose. A man yelled something I didn't understand, and the world turned into noise and light and fear. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just dropped the juice box, and then, before anything else, I felt arms around me. Not my mother's, not someone I knew, but they were strong, and they covered me, and they held me like I was something worth protecting. It wasn't until years later that I truly understood what had happened. At the time, they told me the man was dangerous. They didn't say black. They didn't say tattoos or ex-con. But I was 7. I heard it anyway. The other kids whispered stories. That he was a criminal. That he'd killed someone once. that he only helped me because he wanted to change how people saw him. But I knew better. I remembered the way he pulled me to his chest, how he didn't even flinch when the shot went off, how he looked into my eyes afterward and asked only one thing. You okay? Not did anyone see? Not is someone filming? Just me. My safety. My life. That was Smoke. The visits started a week after he got out of the hospital. I asked my mom if we could bring him something. She said, maybe flowers? I said, juice. She didn't understand at first, but she let me. I remember walking into that sterile room, my knees shaking more than I expected. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired. His eyes were closed. But when he opened them and saw me standing there with a juice box in one hand and a crayon drawing in the other, he smiled. Not wide, not big, just enough to say, you're safe.
I'm glad.
I visited him 5 more times that month. He never said much, sometimes nothing at all. But he listened like it mattered. I told him about school, how I lost a spelling bee, how I named a goldfish Bullet, because I thought it would make him laugh. He didn't laugh, but he smiled. Every time. Time moved, as it does. The mural went up when I was 10. I helped paint the sun. It wasn't perfect, it tilted weird, one eye too big. But he never said a word. He just stood next to it during the unveiling, hands in his jacket pockets, watching like it didn't belong to him. He never talked about that day. Not once. When I turned 16, I wrote an essay about him. It was supposed to be about someone who changed your life. Called it, The Man Everyone Feared, and I Trusted. My teacher cried when she read it. She gave me a hug, then asked, why do you think he never wanted attention? I said, because he already knew who he was. It's the rest of us that didn't. By the time I was 22, Smoke was gone. They said it was his heart. No big funeral. No long obituary. Just a quiet service and a worn chair left empty in the back of the chapel. But I spoke. I wasn't supposed to, but I did. I stood up and told the truth. That he saved me. That he didn't just shield my body, he reshaped the way I saw the world. That I'd spent my whole life trying to earn the second chance he gave me. Even though it had cost him the first he never really got. That I carry him everywhere I go. Not like a weight, but like a compass. I became a teacher. Not because of him, but maybe because of what he taught me. Every time I see a kid being left out, or looked at sideways, I think of him. And I ask myself, what if I'm the only person who will ever see them fully? Because he saw me, before I even knew who I was. One day, a boy in my class came in late. Dirty hoodie, eyes that didn't look up. The other kids shifted away from him. I brought him a chair, asked him if he liked juice. He nodded once. Fruit punch. I smiled. I always keep one in my desk drawer, just in case. Years passed. The mural faded. Like all things left to time and sun. The paint peeled in corners. The once bold colors softened into whispers. But no one painted over it. No one dared. Because even as Ridgeville changed, slowly and unevenly, that wall remembered. New families moved in. Old names moved out. The corner store became a cafe. The church held outreach events. And a new police chief replaced Mitchell. A quiet man who insisted that every officer in training read the original report from that night in the store. Because we don't ever want to mistake a protector for a threat again, he'd say. Some nodded. Some looked away. But change doesn't always start with conviction. Sometimes it starts with shame. And sometimes, when we're lucky, it becomes something gentler. Like honesty. Like honor. Every year, on the anniversary of the day Smoke saved me, someone leaves a juice box by the mural. No name. No message. Just that fruit punch, leaning slightly against the wall, beneath the crayon sun and the words, the man they feared, the man who saved us. I don't know who leaves it anymore. I used to think it had to be me, that if I didn't show up, the story would vanish. But then, one year I was out of town, and the juice box was still there. That's how I knew. He belonged to more than just me now. I visit my classroom every morning before the bell. Sometimes I sit at the desk and imagine him. Smoke. Standing in the back, arms crossed, watching the way I carry what he gave me. He never asked to be remembered. But we do. Not because he was perfect, but because he was proof. Proof that a single act of courage, in the right moment, for the right reason, can outlive everything else. Even prejudice. Even silence. There's a boy in my class this year. Quiet, withdrawn, always in the back row. He draws in his notebook when no one's watching. The other day I asked him what he was sketching. He shrugged. Just someone I made up, he said. He showed me the page. It was a man, tall, hoodie, tattoos on both arms, standing in front of a little girl, arms wide, blocking something behind her. I asked what the drawing was called. He said, "The Shield." Sometimes I wish I could tell Smoke what he left behind. How the town speaks his name now without fear. How kids walk past the mural and don't cross the street anymore. How my students write essays about him even when I don't assign it. But maybe he already knew. Maybe that's why he never explained himself. Because he didn't need to be understood, only witnessed. When I look at the world now, the headlines, the noise, the easy anger, I think about Ridgeville. About how long it took us to say sorry. How long it took us to say thank you. And how, in the end, we were saved by someone who had every reason not to care. The last time I saw him, he didn't say goodbye. Just nodded. That was enough. He wasn't the kind of man who needed closure. He was the kind who left it behind for others to find. And I did. We all did.